feel like men are not honest with themselves to sit down and say, hey, the rug is being drawn out from underneath our feet. Like, we need to now start to think about what it means to be the 21st century man. Think about that. You're going through puberty, your body's going through changes, you're having hormonal changes, which is leading to some certain cravings that you don't understand. Your body is changing, you're having wet dreams as a boy and girl, because girls have wet dreams but no one talks about it. You're putting pillows in between your thighs because it feels good, but you don't understand what is happening. But you have been told that those things are bad.
Welcome to today's episode with the inspiring Lolo Cynthia. As an educator and social commentator, Lolo is reshaping conversations around sexual and reproductive health, advocating for early sex education, and fighting gender-based violence. In this two-part series, we unpack what true empowerment means in today's world.
If you go back to history, you will see that in certain cultures, there were systems to curb toxic masculinity. You will see that men were young boys, they were taken in a group together and trained by the elders to know how to be part of the community, to know how to work on these on the so-called dominant attitude, right? That should serve the purpose of the community. But the thing that I see here is that most of us do not have access to knowledge from the past. We can't assess the way things were done in the past and try to filter the identity and see what can we bring forward into the 21st century or not. So we look to the West very often for so-called mind development, mental development, new ways of living. And so we're then caught in between that. We're not grounded in the African identity. And on the other side, we can't compete in the ideologies and the ways of the West because it's a totally different system. We don't need it. So sometimes I wonder if there's no identity crisis that they're happening. Try to be like the West, but not very sure where you're coming from, right? So you do not really have, and you live in a totally different ecosystem, so you do not really have the tools available for you to reshape your ecosystem.
Oh, wow. Very interesting things, food for thought, because I'm going to go journal about some of the things you said. For me, when I even speak about in the West, we have more men who are committing to change what it means to be a masculine person. If you go on Spotify and you look for a podcast around men talk or whatever it is, you're going to find a lot more of those podcasts that are actually having conversation. So I'm not saying that it's better because the West is a mess as well, dude. But there is a crop of men who are now, sprouting out and trying to say, hey, let's have these conversations, let's have those podcasts. Here in Africa, it's quite different. I mean, when you look at the top 5 podcasts that came out, I think Spotify put that recently, 2024.
Yeah.
Church is the number one. Whole Spotify, the number 1 is church. Then number 2, we look at motivational, messages. There is no podcast about something about intellectually stimulating. There is no podcast about conversations that change the way you think. You know what I'm saying? Not all of us have to be listening to something serious, intellectual all the time, but at least we need to see a diversity of what people are listening to. But when you think about it and you see that list, it validates that first, more men are listening to this podcast, and the kind of podcasts they're listening to are male-anchored podcasts around motivation, power, church. But even the church podcast. Now, these words are based on the Bible, but if you read the Bible, you get to see that being a Christian, Christ-like, Jesus was not this masculine figure that it's being propagated there. So where is this ideology when it comes to religion coming out from? Because if it's coming out from the Old Testament, then seriously, we're not people from, this was written 2,000 years ago for another group of ethnic people with another set of agenda and politics. So why, as we as Africans, now take that to be the guiding principles of our lives? Because it's about power, fundamentally. It's about control. I mean, you're coming into like, well, we have to be Christ-like, be kind, do unto others and the guy is like, I beg, calm down. We're trying to hold power in this community.
Yeah.
We're trying to dictate how people navigate the world, and we're trying to have a hold on them. Nigeria, we use as an example, is one of the poorest countries in the world. We call it multidimensional poverty. But when you look at the list of, like, you know, the richest pastors, I think 3 of them come from Nigeria. So the dichotomy of that fact is also quite interesting, because now religion has become not only as a tool of mind control, but has also become a capitalist way of amassing wealth. Like, if we have to start that's a whole different conversation, but we have to start breaking that down, that's exactly what it is. And when we even talk about, we have an identity problem here in Africa, where men don't really know what it means to be a man anymore, what it means to be an African man. It's because we don't have initiation process anymore. Like what we're talking about is where, you know, a guy gets to 13 years old or 14-year-old, and he goes through this initiation process by talking to the elders who navigate him into the world. You know, they train him or they teach them what it means to be a man in their society. Yeah. We've lost all of that. And also, what I also see is that the men of those days were navigating the world based on what they saw. The women were dependent on the man, and your role as a man is to take care of your family, don't beat your wife and all that. Who is training young men now or initiating them into what it means to be a man in the 21st century?
Yeah.
Where the women are not coming to you to rescue them anymore, where maybe the woman you're actually attracted to has more money than you, has more social standing than you, where you're living in a world now where your woman is about to give birth and they want you to be in the labor room with her. Do you know that is not something that's ever happened in the existence of man? But now that's actually what's happening right now. Like, there is nothing to look back on. So for me, this is what I see, and this is, again, it's not a fully thought out thought. It's that we are in an evolution where men are on the edge of change. We call it apocalypse. And apocalypse, people think it's like, things breaking down. It's like, no, you're on the edge of something new. It's change, renewal. We see men are being forced to evolve into a new kind of man. And they don't have a blueprint of what that is. So it's so messy. It's leading to a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of change in identity, and just struggle in identity of what it means to be this man, because this is not what you've been conditioned. But the women are evolving, and you have to evolve as well.
Yes.
To match. So that's what's happening. But then we have another set of men who are fighting that evolution, because they don't want to move out of that discomfort. They don't want to lose out on the reward that they've been conditioned that they're going to get as a man. So that's why we have this fight of like how it feels like men are more toxic than they used to be in the past years. Like, it feels like men have regressed so badly. Like, when you think about it, past few years, men were evolving. But now, maybe 3-4 years now, they've regressed so badly. It's because they've gotten to that edge. It's an edge that you either jump or you go back. And when you go back, you're going back. There is nothing further. The thing that you have to move through is jumping and taking that faith that when you jump, you're going to come out a better man. So we are really at that precipice of evolution. And evolution is going to happen whether you like it or not. It might be slow. It might leave you behind, but it's going to happen.
So one major solution is definitely like empowering more women to recognize toxicity and to be able to be independent enough. I think men will wake up. Men that are not ready yet will have to wake up. There is no choice there.
Well, no, though, because this is what is frustrating about this, is that we have so many women who are already empowered, who know the thing about toxic masculinity, but there is that human innate need for companionship.
Yes.
Honey,
that's true. I know.
Just wipes your brain.
That you accept anything, you will bear anything, you will reduce your standards.
Yes, and that is something that men have held on to, like, oh, you're going to be lonely and all that. But I'm also seeing women saying, I would rather be lonely than be with you. And I think that's why men are also spiraling, because those, scare tactics that they used to use for women in the past, that, oh, you're going to end up with 7 cats and you're going to be lonely when you get older. Women are like, yeah, thanks. I think I like that. That option seems so nice to me right now. So there's a lot of evolving happening, and we are in the middle of it. Like women, the rights that we have now is not what we had before. And I'm sure in those times there was a lot of, shift and pull happening at those times, that the men were, these are bad women. Those are bad women. They're probably too radical. But right now, when you talk to the man of the 21st century, you'll be like, why can't you guys be like the feminists of the past that used to fight? But they don't recognize that those feminists back then, the men then used to find them as extremely radical. So it's a shift that is happening. It's coming. That's the fight that we're seeing online. It's coming. The men can feel it. That's anyone that tells that they don't see that women are evolving is a liar. The problem now is he feels it, but he doesn't know how to find himself in that new change. Who am I going to become?
There's a lot of identity.
Exactly. Exactly. And I feel like men are not honest with themselves to sit down and say, hey, the rug is being drawn out from underneath our feet. Like, we need to now start to think about what it means to be the 21st century man. What is my identity? Why is it that my identity as a man is anchored on the submission of a woman? Who am I if it's not about a woman? Many men don't know who they are if it's not anchored on on something about a woman.
Wow.
They don't know. Because everything they've been taught is about how to be the kind of man that a woman would want. So most times men think that they're doing things for the women, but no, they're actually now competing with other men. Men perform for other men because it's like the survival of the fittest among the men. Who is the most masculine of them all that would be able to get the woman? Like, they haven't been able to sit down and say, who am I, independent of all of this, independent of what it means to be a man, to be a woman. Who am I? What is my identity? Who says I want to lead? Why do I have to lead? Like, dude, I'm tired. I don't want to lead. Not all men have leadership potential. Like, that's the truth.
Yes.
Or the fact that, you're in class and the girls are better than you in a particular grade, and your teachers are refusing to actually give that child or give that girl the position of the class captain, or to, or they'll be like, how can you be a boy and then you will let a girl beat you in class? Do you know that's an ideology? That's a conditioning.
Yes.
So the boy now, instead of celebrating this girl that is better than him and actually going to her and saying, hey, can you teach me how you got this? He's angry at himself that the girl beat him, because now it feels to him that he is not man enough.
We need new films. We need new media, new films. Because when I listen to you, the work is plenty.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But the thing is that I've also seen is the ecosystem of the man often prevents him from living his true self, showing up for his girlfriend or woman, the ecosystem, right?
Exactly.
And then on the other side, I've seen situations where inside there is emancipation and balance. Outside, even the woman demands her husband show up as a toxic man.
Exactly.
So the perception. So there's something about how I am seen, how I am viewed. It's two sides. It's on the two sides. I can't just put this on the men alone. It's on the two sides. I've really watched this happen, and I'm like, why must you walk behind him in a way that shows that you've given him the space? He's the man. Why? What is all?
You have to be a good woman. It goes back to, you have to be a good woman. That's it. The perception of a good woman.
Yeah.
And you have to reap the reward of that. And just like what you were saying, like, it's so, people are not authentic. In the way that they live. People are afraid of not being liked. People are afraid of being criticized. So even if there is nothing wrong with the relationship that you have, like you said, the ecosystem of the man, he might now live in a world where people start telling him you're a weak man.
Yeah.
So even if himself does not think it's anything about weakness, you start to internalize those projections.
Yes.
So those are like, it's so layered, and I feel like this is a conversation that if we keep going on for years, because the change is going to take a long time. But even like you said, that there are two men. There are the ones that, you know, I fight for my woman. I love that she's empowered, and then there's the man that you have to be in the kitchen. But there is another aspect of men who present themselves to be modern, to be evolved, to like that their women are, you know, doing really well, but they do not want you to do better than them, and that is where it starts to get tricky. That would consciously, you know, stop you from attending a particular meeting, or increasing on the ladder of your career. That liked who they met, but don't like the idea of you growing more than them. So this is the conversation about, like, of course, men want women to work. When men want women to work, men want you to be able to go to your office. Men like the idea of their wives being like career women, or, you know, doing things. But you don't have to be too much.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do it with sense. Don't be too much. That is where the conversation is. So now the truth is, women are moving up the ladder. And that's the conversation of, are you okay with not being on the same path, or even being lower than her in that aspect? A lot of men have no problem with their wives going to work. Yeah. So people say, we want you to just be in the kitchen. It's like, no, men will say, no, we've evolved. We can have a housemaid. We can have a helper. But it's now about you maybe earning more. Yeah. It's not about you, you know, having meetings with people of certain calibers. It's not about you having a meeting that might delay, and he's the one that gets back home first. Yeah, yeah. The question is, have the kids eaten?
Yeah, it's somehow, even though there's a helper and he thinks you should go to work and he's okay with it, somehow both of you come back from work. Probably he comes before you. Somehow there is something in the air, I don't know, that says, even though you just came back and he has been there sitting there watching TV, drop your bag and make sure that the maid has given the children food.
The good wife.
Oh, we keep coming back to this good wife syndrome. So, but looking at this now, because I saw that you had this 16-day campaign against gender violence. You were very active during this period. Share some of the experience, because when we talk about toxicity in masculinity, it goes beyond like, do we share the same ideology? Am I emancipated? And so sometimes it could go into physical violence. It could go into psychological, mental violence, emotional violence. So share some of what you learned during this period of the campaign, and also from your work.
Oh, well, was I active? I'm surprised to see the question that I'm active on 16 days, but I feel like I just did one or two things and I ran away. But for me, you're so right when it says that it transcends from, like, oh, just us talking about gender ideologies and do we have the same values, to physical violence. But it happens in a spectrum. None of these happens in an isolation. It all happens in a spectrum. So your idea of yourself is going to be manifested in the way you engage with people. So when we talk about 16 days, whether it's femicide, like here in Kenya, where I currently live, there's a high femicide rate happening. Like women are being killed. And this is something that we've done protests. It's again, it's multifaceted. It's women finding their power. The more women are evolved and empowered, the more men spiral, because the thing that they were able to use to control them is leaving them. And the only way that they can assert their masculinity is through violence. So it's almost like a catch-22. So there is that. And then there's also the idea of men saying, and this is just something that happened in South Africa. I think yesterday, a man killed his partner and recorded the video and did a video and talked about how, oh, he's been taking care of her and now she decides to leave him. So there is that idea of that. If I get you something, if I desire you and I bought you food or bought you a gift, then I own you. So you want to leave me? I'm going to kill you. You can't leave me. So it's so multifaceted that it's that thing of, like, men not recognizing women's individuality, recognizing women's humanity, agency, thinking that they own them, thinking that they are beneath them, thinking that if they get you something and you decide to leave them, that you have played them. which is like a bruise on their masculinity, and they have to do something to assert that masculinity back. So those are some of the ways that we've seen that, GBV has crumbled. Then there's the emotional abuse as well. That isn't physical, but then they assert their dominance through emotionally abusing you. And because of so many women also, like the story I told about how I was telling my friend about the relationship, and she was so shocked, like, dude, that is crazy. Because so many women have normalized emotional abuse or financial abuse. They're not even able to recognize when they're being abused. They are just experiencing the feeling of that abuse. You're always scared around him, but you think, that's how men are now. You're not meant to be too comfortable. That's the truth. Women don't know that their nervous system is completely shattered. Because even from when you're a child, were you comfortable with your father? Your father comes back from work, everyone runs away from the sitting room and enters their room. Like the template, we don't have a healthy template, so it's so dicey. But the physical abuse one, the femicide one, continues to run rampant, continues to increase. And I think we don't have a society where the laws are taken seriously. We don't, because the people who are meant to protect you are also the perpetrators. The police officers are perpetrating violence.
It's domestic.
It's a family issue. Or even the police officers are the perpetrators themselves. A woman goes to report and she's violated by the police officer in the police cell. So we really have a breakdown in terms of like who is going to fight for women's rights. There is the very, the most recent conversation about, I think, Domicilia, the French lady, that her husband sexually assaulted her and was able to find 50 men. Yes. Do you know how crazy that is? To find 50 men
that were willing to come,
aware that you were not, in your senses, aware that you were not conscious. So it's like the grave consequences of this, and the vast majority of the fact that people say we don't know if it's not all men but always a man. That's a true thing. So the magnitude of this problem is so intense because you never really know if this person is capable of doing this until they do it. So we don't have laws that protect women. A woman would report that her abuser has been stalking her, and the police will do nothing until she was killed. So we need to start making sure that we have gender specific, whether it's police stations or family courts, that really recognize the importance of when a woman reports for something or asks for restrictive laws that make sure that you can't come and meet me. So there's really so much, and I think even women are losing hope certain times because you report somebody, they arrest the person, but then the next day the person is roaming the street with you. You're scared because now they can come attack you. So we don't take the gravity of violence against women seriously. We don't think that it is something that should be penalized. This is not just we, like the government, the police officers, the law. They feel like it's just how men are. It's a domestic issue. You guys will sort it out. We need to start having laws. We need to start having campaigns that are so grievous that actually make men uncomfortable. When you go around the billboards, and I spoke about this here in Kenya, you see billboards that has the word massage, and the picture is the picture of a woman and her bum bum. You don't even see her face. The bum massage phone number underneath. And this is what I say, it's common, it's everywhere. And I tell people, if it's during GBV 16 days or even any other time in the world, why are we not having billboards that say men stop killing us? We are tired. We need billboards with those kind of gravitas. I know there is a particular country, I'm sure maybe it's in the UK or so, I can't really remember. There is a billboard that was out there where like there is a soccer match playing and the billboard was quite just talking about how don't hit your wife, like because when there is a soccer match, that's where it increases. And guys were like, how can you put that billboard? But it started a conversation. And this is a conversation based on facts. Now you're forced to confront what is happening. I think most times we are so... And it makes sense that we don't want to be so out there because once you also trigger men resort to violence. So it's like you don't want to do anything that's going to put you in that position. But we need to be bold. We need to be able to call out the person. The problem is not that there's gender. Men are killing women. You have to be able to say men. You have to be able to say men, stop beating women. You have to call the problem to solve the problem. And I feel like most times we skirt around it because we don't want to be too dominating, or even in the media, with the way they report abuse, girl killed by partner. Like the partner is now something on the other side. We need to be able to say 41 men have killed this. Like put the focus on the problem. So I think those are some of the things that for me, when we talk about GBV, 16 days of activism, and I'm always talking about media messaging, we need to start framing this conversation in a way that you can't look away. When you can't look away, now you need to start having conversations. If you're a father, you're driving your kids in the car and they see that billboard, they're going to ask you, Daddy, what is that?
Yes, that's true. And then it even makes the men who are not violent, emancipated men, it prompts them to take action, to speak up, because they do not want to be in the same pot with every, that makes sense.
Exactly. Because I saw a tweet by a man recently. He was talking about how the loudest and the worst of us men, or the worst of us men cannot be the loudest of us. If you don't say anything, that is going to be the perception of you. You cannot open Google now and say violence against women and there is not at least 3 or 4 or 10 new news article about something. How can that be the perception of you? So we really do need men to also start using their voices to start countering those messages. The reason why the Andrew Tates, because they also have an Andrew Tate of Kenya as well, and even Nigeria. Oh, they do. And we also have in Nigeria, we have in every country now. The reason why those guys are able to amass such following is because there is a gap in mentors. Men are looking for men. These guys come in, they fill the gap, they tell you you're not a problem, fuck the women are the problem, go there, make money. They show you the women they have, they show you their cars, they show you smoking cigars, they show you that they have power. Boys are like, yo, this is what I want. There is a gap. And that gap can only be filled by men. Like I said, the women cannot tell you how to be a man.
You're so right in this. This is so correct, and I've never really thought about it from this perspective that it's more important, of course, to have other men addressing these issues to men, right? So the men do not feel undermined. Their masculinity does not feel undermined when a woman is addressing it. But on the other side, then hear myself say that now means I'm thinking like, okay, so it's me again as a woman that I have to look out for him. I'm not going to address it so that he doesn't feel his ego is bruised. So, well, I think both. Women, we need to be loud, put a name to it, put a name to the perpetrators, and men, they need to wake up, and that will spiral. That will make men who are not violent speak up. Because, and another thing I'm thinking about, like, as you be speaking is, I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe I was 14 or so. Because my father was violent, physically violent, mentally, emotionally, all forms of that you can imagine. And he was that kind of man that when he was coming home, just hearing his car sometimes at the gate, I could see my mother, she's already wrong. Her existence is already wrong, you know? And so it's now about trying to fix up everything, you know, and there was so much tension, and he had a very beautiful side, and this is something I keep wondering about. He has a very beautiful side, and he can really wrap you in his arms and everything. So I saw how that was somehow manipulative, in the sense that he beats my mom to the extent that she has to wear glasses to cover her face. Because when she goes to teach, her colleagues will ask what happened. Sometimes she will lie and put the glasses the whole time so the kids don't see it in the school. Then when she comes back, the way he begs for forgiveness and some subtle threats. I'm sure now as an adult, I now recognize their threats, like what will happen to the children if we separate, you know, those are threats, right? Of course, from her teaching, she's not going to be able to pay for the schools that we're in and everything. So those are threats. Then he begs and she forgives him. And then she vents, laments to her friends, and they console her. But one dynamic I kept noticing was, it was not just my mom, but other women. It's like there was a kind of competition competition is the wrong word, but it was more or less like, how much can you bear? The more you can bear in this toxic relationship, the more beatings you endure and still not leave, the greater you are, you know. And for me as a child, I couldn't understand it. But at the same time, my mom would sit there and cry and tell me, don't ever let this happen to you. Don't ever let this happen to you. But she was taking it all. And I know the sacrifice that she was making, in the sense of, she wanted us to go to school and everything, so she's going to stay there. But often I ask myself, are these not the lies we tell ourselves as mothers, right? I'm doing it for my child, so I'll endure. So it now becomes a group of mothers enduring for the sake of the child.
Yeah.
Do you understand what
I completely understand, and I'm so sorry about your experience. Let's not push over that. That's something quite great. So I'm really sorry that that's something you experienced, and your mom as well. And what you said about the competition thing, it is so true. And I talk about how in our society we teach women that the amount of suffering that we can endure is directly proportional to our level of womanhood. So if you're a strong woman, then you've been able to endure. Which when women talk about their marriage, they talk about the things that they endured and how they were able to overcome that suffering. And that's what gave them more strength as a woman. And that's something we need to break away from. And when we talk about your mom and the conversations they're having with each other, it's also a way to placate each other. I'm not going to leave. You're not going to leave. Let's all be together. At least when we come together and we talk about our suffering, it's a shared suffering.
Yes.
And we gain strength through talking about that suffering. If your mom says, you know what, I'm leaving this relationship, I'm leaving this marriage, I can't do it. Do you know those friends will not be there for her?
Yeah, that's true. That could be
true. That's a fact. They're not going to be there for you because, one, you're reminding them of something that they want to do, but they don't have the strength to do.
That's true. Yeah. Yes.
So that's one thing for sure. And then the second one is that you are putting a dent on their womanhood. Because if you do leave and you do succeed, then what does that say about them? So there is that aspect. And then the other part of I think your question you asked about, are women not just telling themselves these lies of I'm staying for my child and I'm staying for because of this. The truth is, when you're in an abusive relationship, you need to have a recording in your brain that gets you through it. Even you will go crazy. I mean, what, you're only left with pain.
Yes, that's true.
And abusers are not abusers every single time of the day. So when they've abused you and they come and they placate you and they romance you and they say, I'm so sorry, your brain holds on to that good memory to be able to overlook the suffering, because that's the only way you can endure it. And then when we have mothers who say, I'm staying for my kid, the truth is that's probably what they believe. And the staying for their kid is not because they think the kid will be better off emotionally. Is that I'm staying for my kid to make sure they're still going to be able to go to school. I'm staying for my kid to be able to make sure I can still provide for their needs. But the truth is that your children are also internalizing that. Your kids are also dealing with the fallback of that, watching your mom being beat up and things. No one wants that. Nobody wants that. So if you're staying for your kid, you're actually traumatizing them. It's just really hard. The alternative is starting again, afresh. The alternative is accepting to be a divorcee in Nigeria, where being a divorced woman is one of the biggest stereotype and stigma you can be with. It's the alternative is your child dating somebody and going to meet the family of that person, and the family says, oh, you're from a broken family. We don't want our child to come from a broken family. It's the alternative. So sometimes women sit down and actually think about what it means to step out. The alternative also is that a woman who divorces in Nigeria does not get the luxury of what happens in the West, where you get 50%. No,
that's
your husband can crush you.
Yes, that's true.
The alternative is, do you even have the money for a lawyer? What will happen is that your husband will separate you, marry another person, but you're not officially divorced.
Yeah, that's true. That's so
true. The alternatives is such a heavy burden that sometimes it's just easier for you to be there, let your children, grow up. And then the way you leave that marriage is when your child has given birth and you go and stay with her for omugo. And then you don't come back.
Yes. You're so
true. We sometimes when we also look back at our parents, we have to recognize the context of which they're in.
Yeah.
It's not like now that people are getting divorced and it's a bit more of a fluid conversation, for women of a certain strata, because it's still definitely something a lot of women cannot do. But now it's no more as crazy as it used to be. But think about then. Think about even now, a woman in a community where marriage is your identity. Are you what are you living for? Where are you going? Where are you starting? The idea of you, so you will never be married again, because who's going to marry you? Which man is going to want to be with you? But your husband leaves you. He has like a lineup of women that are ready to come and take over. So it's really just giving empathy and context to what the women had to go through, and the fact that they found survival mechanisms in the little box that they found themselves in, and they were able to just accept that.
What I really appreciate, is that even in that situation, that my mom always kept telling me not to accept this. Do you get it? And maybe she said it out of the pain. I don't know why she said it, but she meant it. But what happened was that thing stuck. That was the only thing that stuck in my mind. Like till today, it's just there. I still hear that voice. Don't accept this. So that voice comes up in different scenarios. Like, I'm like, no, I'm not going to accept this, right? So that was for me very empowering to hear someone who has gone through this, who's surviving this, say those words, share that experience, and give me hope, right? So I strongly believe that sharing our experiences could also give someone else hope. And there is something that I've always been thinking about. I think it's so important that we keep talking about this as women, because I don't know for others, but for me, growing up, who born you to talk about sex? Well, seriously, that's reserved for. Maybe it happens before the child comes, or I don't know. But when the child has been born, then definitely you must have had sex. That's just the mentality. You dare not talk about it. But I've had secret meetings with me and my friends where we'll explore, ask ourselves, how does this thing happen, and all these things. And in those moments, it could have gone astray, right? We could get the wrong information and everything. But still, because it was not open to talk about it, or we didn't have that liberty to ask questions, even to older ones, our parents and everything, I didn't get to know my body. I didn't get to experience, except you've experienced sexuality in a different form that is really pleasurable, and then you get to know what you've been missing before. But if you've not, you still don't know what you're missing. You still see it as just as functional. It's just sex, and it's meant to satisfy this person, and you're done with it. Good, So how do we start to open up or do you even see that the conversation is being open now, that young women, we can begin to explore sexual identity and talk about sexuality? Do you see that happening in the African continent or in Nigeria specifically?
Well, I feel like right now things are evolving. That's a good thing. That's at least a good thing, because I think what we have now is, I think we don't have too much information. You open your phone, you can find anything you're trying to find. But the physical information and the understanding of one's body is still something that we are grappling with. And it's also because of, you just mentioned it, is what your thought about your sexuality as a girl, as a woman, is that it's there for others. It's not for you. It's either for procreation or to please your man. So a lot of women grow up with a lack of understanding about themselves, because they don't even touch themselves. First of all, I'm always teaching women how to masturbate. It is so important to be able to understand that pleasure is something you can give yourself as well, to be able to learn how your body functions and what you like, to be able to please yourself without the expectation of pleasing others. Because once there is also that expectation of pleasing others, it moves into a performance. And which is also what, messes up with a lot of women's sexuality, is that you're not in it. You're performing for the other person to make sure the other person is feeling good about what's happening at that moment. So we need to have sexuality education in school. Most times people think sex is about talking about sex, which is completely untrue, because that's actually the last thing we talk about. It's about Puberty, understanding your body, understanding gender norms, understanding what healthy relationship is, understanding STDs, because most times we focus on teenage pregnancies because that means there is an evidence of sex, but no one talks about STDs. So like it's really about discussing all the other aspects about sex, because sex is not just the physical thing. It starts in the mind.
Yes, yeah.
If you're taught to have shame about your sexuality because you're a Christian or because of religious beliefs, no matter where you are, you're always going to believe that your sexual desires is wrong, is sinful. And think about that. You're going through puberty, your body is going through changes, you're having hormonal changes, which is leading to some certain cravings that you don't understand. Your body is changing, you're having wet dreams as a boy and girl, because girls have wet dreams, but no one talks about it. You're putting pillows in between your thighs because it feels good, but you don't understand what is happening. But you have been told that those things are bad, those desires are bad. It's so easy for you to now think of yourself as bad.
Yes, yeah.
Which is what makes it easier for predators to take advantage of teenage girls, because they tell you that those things are good. Now you meet a guy that tells you that those things are good, and he can even make it better by touching you and doing all those things. So you never even know that you're being abused, because what that guy is doing feels good, because no one has told you that as you're going through puberty, your body is evolving, your brain is evolving. You're starting to see men, women, whatever it is, through the lens of sexuality that maybe you didn't when you were younger. And it's not something bad, it's something human, it's something innate, it's something that you have to grow into. Now it's about understanding those desires, recognizing that it comes with consequences. So when you don't have these discussions with young people, you're not giving them the right tools to make informed decisions about their sexuality, men and women. But it's just that women, we really do bear the brunt of most of it all. So I feel like we're coming into a time where women are now talking about these things. Young girls are learning about these things. We're having more shows, things about, these kind of conversations. But one of my biggest, issues or my biggest fears is that more information doesn't always mean good information. Because you can be having a lot of information, but you don't know the one that is false, the one that is a myth, the one that's unhealthy. And now, because we have so much information, we are also seeing a heightened level of sexualization of girls, over sexualization of teenage girls in the media, that they themselves don't even understand what it means to have a healthy sexuality. Where they feel like, maybe my ability to please this guy is also what makes me, a sexual being. They don't know that, okay, what if I want to abstain from sex? Does that mean that I'm sexually liberated? Those conversations, the nuances of those conversations around our sexuality, our reproductive health, our reproductive right, around pleasure. Those are the things that I am looking forward to having or seeing more in our society, whether it's media, social media, our books, our TV, conversations in real life. I feel like once we start breaking down those nuances, taking shame and stigma away from it, we're really going to be able to talk to women about sex, talk to them about masturbation. Let them see masturbation as not just something that, you have to watch porn. No, like the biggest sex organ is the brain, teach them about those things. Let them understand that masturbation is also research. It's not only about pleasure, it's research. It's to know your body. There's some women that have never seen their vagina before. They can't even look at it because it's told you have, when you bath, you wash it quickly, you clean it up. Is it that for somebody else to see or for you to give birth? No, that's the truth.
That's true. Yeah, that's so true.
When you have those ideologies about yourself, about your body as something sinful, no matter what it is, even if you find someone that sex is meant to be pleasurable, you're going to deal with a lot of shame that you disconnect from your body when you're in the act. It's no longer something that is an extension of what you're feeling, a physical expression of pleasure, of connection. It's something that once you're done with it, you should be ashamed of it. So that's a whole other conversation that we can have, but
yes. Oh, of course. This is not the last time we're going to have conversations, and I really look forward to what we can do together. So for someone listening right now or watching this, how can they support your work?
Follow me online. I'm everywhere. Okay, follow me on social media. It's LOLO_CY, Lolo_CY. Next year, I also want to start doing more of my videos like I used to do. We are going to we probably be a guest on my podcast as well. I'm starting a podcast where I'll be talking about issues like gender, sexuality, just basically some of the things we discussed today. And if you follow me on there, you can read my work. You can see my videos. I have a sexuality education program for teenagers and African youths. It's called My body is mine, my beam, MYBIM.
And that is in Kenya, right?
Yeah, it's in Nigeria and Kenya, but we are also online. So a lot of our conversations, we want to make sure it's digital so we can reach people who are not physically here, but are able to connect with us everywhere as well. So yeah.
That would be great. So do you think there's something that's so dear to you that you want to talk about that we've not spoken today? We've not talked about?
I think we've spoken quite in length. Even I'm just like, I hope I said things that made sense.
Oh, yes. It's so great to learn. You opened my eyes and my perspective to new angles. You showed me new perspective, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to learn, to see these issues from another totally different angle, and understand what the struggle is sometimes, and understand where it's been done well and where there's progress and what we should do more of. What I see is we don't have enough podcasts where you have, or shows where you have such conversations, but from an African perspective. We often have it from a Western perspective, but the contexts are different and some of the struggles are different. So I think we have to put our voice in this global conversation so that our contexts get recognized and the challenges get recognized, the progress gets seen. So it's beautiful. If you start a podcast, that would be so good to add to the conversation. Now we have a closing tradition, and this is I think this might even tie to what you just said just now. So the question is, if you had all the tools, the time and resources that you desire, everything you had, you have no form of limitation, be it emotionally, financially, space, no form. What would you do?
Ooh, you mean in life?
Depends on how you want to take it. Yes, in life.
To be quite honest, I saw that question and I liked it, made me journal. I feel like I'm doing everything I want to do now. That if I had those resources, I would just be doing it on a grander scale. I want to have a school. I love education, so that's definitely something. I want to have a TV production house where we create content, talk shows, series, teenage programs, those things that are really on, like, movies and the rest, that have nice themes in it, but it's still entertaining and fun. So I want to be doing that. I want to have written my books. I love writing, that I have not published anything, but I want to be able to have books. And so for me, those are key things that I want to do. And then travel. I love seeing new places, doing documentaries. So if I had all the resources, those are some of the things I would be doing. So I'm doing them now on a smaller scale, but I feel like if I had it, I would, magnify the whole thing as well. Yeah. I would have said politics, but I realized that, child, that ain't for me. Politics is not for me. So maybe an NGO as well, which is like what we're talking about, a foundation that supports, that give grants, because I've always wanted to be able to have a venture capital, organization that supports social impact organizations, individuals who are, content creators in the field, trying to create, just the good in the world. So having that fund, if I had the money, fund, I want to be able to be a philanthropist. I want to do that.
Oh my God, this is so beautiful. Thank you you want to create a better space, ecosystem, world for us. Thank you for the time, for the insights and the work that you do, for being when I saw your videos and saw some of the work you do, even there was a friend, I was like, oh yeah, Lolo Cynthia, I know how. She doesn't know you personally, but she knows your work.
Wow.
And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. You're giving us a gift. You're a gift to our world, to Nigeria, especially Nigeria, because for people that are not from Nigeria and do not understand the context of the cultures, the cultural holds that are there, having a young woman speak out on issues like sexuality, Jesus of Nazareth. I mean, seriously, we need your voice. We need more of your voice. And thank you so much for the work that you do. And we just started a conversation. I really look forward to seeing you live, being there with you live, and exploring how we can empower more people to actually create narratives that will design the future that we want to live in. So thank you for your work against gender violence, for your work raising awareness, talking about the masculine aspect of this. I think it's so important. Even if you say it's better that the men call out the men, talk to them, but hearing your perspective as a woman is so important for us to understand. You took us through this journey right now of this conversation and gave me more hope. This is what I'm leaving out of this conversation with, right? Hope that there are people like you doing the work, calling it out, saying it, creating the spaces. Hope that things are changing. It's a lot different from when I grew up now. So there is there's change going on. Thank you so much, Lolo, for this.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. I didn't know what we're going to talk about. I'm just like, I'm just going to be free. Let's just talk.
Yes.
Let's just gist.